was thinking about perceptions, and I think that is so important in our lives, because how do our perceptions fuel the experiences that we have in our lives? And I think for many of us, we don't even realize that we're kind of hardwired. You know what you were talking about before, Rob, about when you're a child? You know, up until the age about 7 years old, I think it is, we absorb so much information, and we're pretty much set as far as how we're going to see the world and how we are going to react in the world. So I think it's really important for us to examine what are our beliefs. And a good way to start, I think, is going back to your childhood and examining or thinking about what kind of conversations did you hear at the dining room table. So many of us, like I've been a staunch Democrat. Well, and I thought, well, that's because I'm an independent thinker. Well, guess what? My parents were Democrats. My father was an independent. A lot of our beliefs, or at least a lot of my beliefs, I can see now, were fueled from the time that I was just a kid. And so, again, I think it's just really essential that we, you know, do some exercises with ourselves and go back in time and say, okay, what were the messages I heard about money, about relationships, about love?
Safety of the world. Safety of...
Einstein once said that the most important question you can ask yourself is whether you live in a friendly universe or not.
Oh, I love
and it's
that,
just,
yes.
I thought it's just beautiful, because how you answer that question basically determines what kind of life that you lead, and then of course what kind of life that your kids lead to a large extent. You know, do we live in a friendly universe? I love that.
Yeah,
That's great.
And those belief systems that you're talking about, like by 7, that you're, you know, all that is, you know, we're bombarded by perceptions constantly. They're like our senses can take in like zillions more perceptions than our brains can process. So whatever those belief systems were, that just sort of sets up what we're deleting and allowing in any situation. But that can change. You know, once you become aware of that as an adult and you look into that, you can start, you know, realizing that you're actually choosing which perceptions to delete, to not let through, and which ones to let through, and you can make better choices once you identify it.
In some of the workshops that I do, one of the things I suggest to people about out-of-the-box thinking, because I say, you know, one way to break through those barriers and become, you know, this really empowered person and look at your life through a different lens, a more hopeful and positive lens, is just become a critical thinker. And I will usually say to people, and I bet every single one of you here think you are, correct? And you're an out-of-the-box thinker, right? And they'll go, yeah, sure. And I'll use a couple of examples, which too bad we didn't have a flip chart right here. We could do it. And it's amazing. And I will tell them, this is not to make you feel bad in any way, you know, because when I first did some of these exercises, I couldn't do any of them. I couldn't figure it out. And they're very, very simple exercises to kind of get your out-of-the-box thinking neuron working. So I think that what's so amazing is kids are out-of-the-box thinkers.
Well, they haven't learned yet not to be.
So we beat it out of them. The
Yeah.
domestication of the species, as Don McCourt calls it, right? The
And
domestication of
it's interesting as adults when you start to think out of the box and you start changing your beliefs from that of what your family thought or something, how all of a sudden you're like, you become the black sheep, or oh, she's the one that thinks that way. And it's really important to also own to yourself that these are your beliefs and who you are, and it doesn't matter if they believe that or not. I always tell my family members that I completely respect where you are and what you believe, but this is what I believe, and I hope you can respect it as well. And if you don't, that's fine, but this is where I am with it. And it has helped to bridge some of the problems that we've had where you don't have the fights anymore, like, oh, like the Democrat, Republican, or conservative.
Exactly.
I mean, you can actually just listen to each other. And I think that's one of the things I learned recently, too, is that I'm one to take things personally when people say something to me. So I'm learning to, instead of reacting right away when someone says something and taking the perception of, oh, they said something mean to me, or they're upset with me or something like that, to start listening from my heart. And when you do that, you can actually hear from a different level what the person is really saying. So you might actually see something that's going on with the person that they may say it one way, but you can tell that they're feeling something else. And so the perception is totally different from how you look at it.
Call that your inner crackhead. That's what that is. That's your inner crackhead right there. That's what it is. Because at the end of the day, it's amazing how much of us, we have this self-talk that goes on in your head all day, every day. Most of us don't realize that it's just self-talk, and you don't have to believe everything that you think. But yeah, that's your inner crackhead.
I love that. That is great. I'd like to use that.
I've got a cool question, something that I've been thinking about a lot. and maybe Lisa, this is a good one for you, is that how do you, so my experience is that as a kid I was a lot more creative, I was a lot more out of the box thinker, and I was a lot less conditioned. And I know that you speak to that, with your books, I Miss You, Sticky Face, and how do you tap into that as an adult? Because you're a very out of the box thinker, very creative, in fact all of you are. Is there anything that you would...
Well, studies have shown that the year you're 5 years old is the year you're most creative in your whole life. And separate studies, which I like to tie together when I'm talking to kids about creativity, 5 years old is the year that we laugh the most. The average 5-year-old laughs 110 times a day.
Oh, how beautiful.
It goes down until by the time we're 40, there are only on average 11 authentic laughs per day.
Oh, God.
So I kind of think there's no coincidence there that the year we're most easily amused is the year that we're the most creative. So I think it really is just an allowing. I think everyone has so much innate creativity that we just don't allow. It's not valued in our society. It's not anything that's encouraged. It's rocking the boat. Status quo thinking is much more popular. So yeah, when I do creativity workshops, a lot of it is just allowing yourself and realizing how it will benefit all areas of your life to.
They've done these incredible studies, Lisa, that tie into that really well, where they've taken optimists and they've compared them to pessimists, and they found that pessimists largely think their life isn't going to work out very well, and they end up experiencing more doctor visits, they make less money, their relationships turn out for the worse, and optimists, of course, their counterparts do a lot better in almost all life arenas. And it's interesting, so at the end of the day, the question is often well, who's right? Are pessimists tend to be right about life, or are optimists right about life? And the truth is they're both right. The only question is who's happy, right?
That's it.
And optimists, by and large, absolutely,
right,
absolutely. And optimists, by and large, are happier people over the course of their lives. So it really is a question of what you believe at the end of the day, because it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy eventually.
Yeah, they actually did that study with a group of nuns in France, where they went over like
their high school photos, right?
Yes. And they went back through their whole lifetime, and then it was actually like an Alzheimer's dementia study, and they found that the ones that were very happy with their daily life and just looked forward to every day were extremely alert when they got into their later on in years, and the ones that were always the pessimistic, who always were getting after everybody and were not happy people were the ones that had dementia or even into Alzheimer's.
Absolutely.
And am I thinking of the same one where they actually measured that by looking at their high school graduation
picture,
photos?
yes.
They analyzed their facial expression in the photo, and they could project what was going to, 40 years later.
Check this out. So they took that, there's a study like that, right? And they took it to like the next level, like basically that study on steroids. And what they found was that, interestingly enough, they took a group of people that were in their 80s or 70s to 80s, and they said, we want you to pretend like it's 1940, or we want you to pretend like you're as old as you were in 1940, okay? Then they set up the environment in a situation. They put them in sort of this like little community living place, and they made the newspaper look like it was 1940, a specific date. We said, we want you to conduct yourself exactly like you were then. And then they watched these folks over the course of a week or 2 weeks and a month, and they found that they had all these improvements in their health condition, their attitude improved, there was a lot more laughter in their life, and even their body, something with respect to their fingers were growing again. It was an incredible experience.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that study, and it was incredible. It was measurable. It was measurable improvement physiologically and as well as mentally and emotionally. So what does that tell you? And one of the things that I do also in the workshops is I suggest to people to start doing things differently in their life, like change, and we get into habits. And one thing I'll say is sleep on the other side of the bed. Brush your teeth, not the way or when you did it, or take a different route to work, or do anything that you can think of differently to start, because we're wired. We're hardwired. We're just like the computer. And
literally, and I love that, Michele, because they found that the brain is very plastic.
Yes.
And so to a certain extent, genes help predispose you to thinking certain thoughts.
Right.
But if you can find a way to think different thoughts, it actually goes back and turns and sort of molds your brain and the neural pathways in your brain in a way that lets you think those happier thoughts more consistently.
Yeah. What do they say that neurons that wire together or fire together, wire together?
Yeah.
Yes.
I teach kids in the creativity workshops how to form new neural pathways in their brains, and they think this is so cool. And it's just whatever creative challenge you have to